Recently, after the drop of their newest expansion, Endwalker, Final Fantasy XIV has received a lot of traction. It was to the point where even people who wouldn't have considered playing the game gave it a chance, such as popular World of Warcraft streamer Asmongold. But let's backtrace a bit. What exactly is Final Fantasy XIV? Final Fantasy XIV is a fantasy MMORPG developed and published by Square Enix. Let me also clarify that the current Final Fantasy XIV is not the same as it was back in 2010. The initial launch of Final Fantasy XIV was actually considered to be a disaster, according to 14's current producer and director, Naoki Yoshida. Basically, long story short, the game was launched at a poor state and was restructured completely from the ground up. As mentioned, Final Fantasy XIV is an MMORPG. However, keep in mind that the game is an RPG first, rather than an MMO aspect. Meaning the game has quite a big emphasis on the story building first. This approach is very different from the traditional MMO pacing, as generally other games of this genre would be focused on getting the endgame aspect as fast as possible. In Final Fantasy XIV, you're able to pace yourself and enjoy the game you want as your adventurer, whether it's questing, socializing, housing, raiding, and more. But you may be questioning to yourself, what about the story? As previously mentioned, the big part of the game is the story, and I've heard many times from countless people, is Final Fantasy XIV even a Final Fantasy game? Though many people will be thrown off because of the genre being an MMORPG, Final Fantasy XIV is still a Final Fantasy game. The story building from their base game, A Realm Reborn, into their future expansions such as Heavensward and Stormblood has continued to develop and evolve throughout the years. Without saying spoilers for the game, their recent expansion is concluding their biggest story that was ongoing for 6 years. And all I can say is what a journey. If you're interested in playing the game but do not like the story aspect of games, you do have the option to skip the story. It will cost you though. Players are given the option to create their character and their starting class, which will determine where they begin. The 8 classes that players can pick are Gladiator, Pugilist, Marauder, Lancer, Archer, Conjurer, Thaumaturge, and Arcanist. All of these classes will either start in Gridania, Limsa Liminsa, or Ul'dah. Each expansion will also have other jobs you can unlock later in the game, such as Dark Knight, Red Mage, and Sage. When you create your character, if you find that the class you picked isn't for you, don't worry. Your character is able to play any job. Additionally, players have the ability to expand their kits into various professions such as gathering or crafting, which each branching off into different subclasses like culinarian or botanist. With these professions, you can craft neat items such as special fashion equipment, gear, or even furniture. Now, why would we want to craft furniture? The game also offers a housing system where players can have their own plot and design their house the way they want. For players wanting a challenge, the game offers more difficult content called Savage Raids, and they require team coordination and communication to overcome these fights. Even the smallest of mistakes can set a team back. And for the more experienced endgame raiders, there are the ultimate fights, which are currently considered the hardest content in the game. Final Fantasy XIV also features seasonal events, such as the Starlight event, All Saints' Wake, the Hatching Tide, and many more. These special events are treated almost as they are similar to the real-life holidays that we celebrate, such as Christmas, Halloween, and Easter. From time to time, Final Fantasy XIV will have special collaboration events and quests. They've had crossover events with Monster Hunter, Yokai Watch, Dragon Quest, Final Fantasy XV, Nier Automata, and many more. Overall, I would highly recommend giving Final Fantasy XIV a shot, and if you haven't, it's worth jumping into in 2022. Final Fantasy XIV does require you to buy the game, expansions, and monthly subscription. However, there is a free trial that new users can access, and it contains a lot of content. With the free trial of the game, the players are able to play until level 60 with the inclusion of the base game, A Realm Reborn, and their award-winning expansion, Heavensward. The free trial alone contains more than 100 hours of game time. Over the years of updates and changes made to the game have definitely made Final Fantasy XIV one of the best MMORPGs currently. If you enjoyed our content here at GGN, please consider subscribing for more video game content and reviews. Thank you for watching.